Please feel free to use the restrooms and take the snacks and bring them back to the room. Please join us in the room. Outside, it just rained, so we have this man-made disaster called traffic. Therefore, it's better off that you are here than going outside and stuck in the traffic. But thank you all for staying with us for all of 3 talks. I think it's important that we summarize what we've just experienced and open the floor for a lot of you to experience our speakers firsthand. So.
Thank you very much, Kai. I do agree we need a little bit of break and maybe a little bit of sugar. It's been a long talk, but certainly even me, I think all of the lectures or talk has got my heart racing, and I really appreciate the kind of combination and the mixture of the speakers today. I think it was a very well curated kind of series where we transit fluidly from Cecilia's lecture, where we see a lot of relationships between, again, AI or technology as tools, but then, again, how do we reconnect, beyond just human to human, but also, I think, human to something else that is non-human, to plant, to and other species, like you said, interspecies. And then to Luca, where I think you brought us back a little bit, to like this world we live in, but also how to also materialize that through everyday like space, and how we can really think about connections between human to human in, just like beautiful architectural space, any public spaces we can see. And then of course, lastly, Miho, where, like interconnected system and community become a part of this larger also cycle of design, where we could start to see participation emerging through alongside the tools and technology. So, yeah.
Right, with that, I think we should invite our speakers back on stage.
Definitely.
So, Luca, Cecilia, and Miho. Round of applause.
And Herbie in the middle.
Herbie is the CEO, so she, it is the most important. I think Pim already made quite a great summary already, and thank you all for being here. I also had a talk this morning, and I think the future is not now, but it was here already yesterday. So thank you for making me feel very obsolete after one session. But I see that there's a common theme throughout, that all of the talks from yesterday towards today roots back to the roots of intelligence from nature, and of course from us, from wisdom. And I think every speaker here, and also this morning, they had their journeys started in separate ways, but they're now here connected. Just like what Steve Jobs said, that we connect the dots backwards, and now we get to see how all of this sort of integrates and becomes a cohesive gathering. So thank you all very, very much for being here. I think what we would like to see now is, the big picture and how each of our speakers, why we're here gathered as a collective, see how the future of intelligence would affect each and every area of design and architecture. So I think that would be the main theme. From the speculative to actual implementation. So that's a very wide range. From that range, I think all of our audiences here may have some questions within that range. So, how should we start this, Pim?
Well, I think there's a lot, because honestly, I'm just going to be like, a little bit less formal. I guess, we need a little bit of a highlighted conversation and just to make the flow goes with the conversation naturally. So I feel like, first of all, you guys have so many projects that I really want to, personally, I think it's very interesting. We can spend hours talking about it, in details and in depth. So I really appreciate that. But one thing that come across, thank you to also John Ben for giving maybe the opening line, but I think one thing that I really like, and maybe the theme that I'm going to ask you, maybe it's not specifically about the projects, but if anyone in the audience would like to know specifically about the project, please raise your hand, right? You are welcome to be our co-moderator for today. But I think one thing that I really like is, what does it mean for creativity, authorship, and also responsibility through AI? I think this is something that I know that you guys have 45 minutes, but with packed full of information. You didn't talk about it directly, but I think it's the underlying core in all of your talks. So I would, with that, may like to start with Cecilia. I don't think everybody will forget her lectures today, starting with this rocket, dynamics, which I really love. But you often talk, Cecilia, about designing better futures and thinking in systems also. So maybe coming back to AI a little bit, in your view, how does AI change who gets to imagine the future? And is it expanding participation or concentrating power in new ways?
Starting with such hard questions.
Tough.
Is it tough? Okay, not
question.
lighthearted at all. I take my words back.
Can we take a step back? Because I want to think a little bit about what we're actually living through. Because if we look at technologies that we have lived through until now, until Gen AI, I would even say, let me think through my thoughts. Every single technologies until we have today are making our life easier. They're building things faster, optimizing systems, building more, But Gen AI, as far as I know, and I'm interpreting it, is the first technology that I have experienced that is not just making things bigger, faster, or more. It's the first technology that is creating something new. And I find that fundamentally changing the way how we operate, because if until now we are the creators, and we have been the creators of making things, all of a sudden, if AI is also creating things, what the hell are we doing, So your very question of okay, the creator, what is creativity and what is this shift? And on one hand, I think that we are every day more and more becoming curators. Yeah, when you ask ChatGPT to produce, what is the result of X, Y, and Z, and it gives you 100 options, we curate, right? And so on one hand, I think that we're becoming more and more curator, but becoming a curator requires us to have critical thinking abilities, which I think we could be, this generation of students and young adults need to have more of. It's the criticism of education. So, so from that perspective, your question, what was the question again?
I think you sort of answered that in a way. How does AI change who gets to imagine the future?
Yes,
basically?
yeah. So, as almost every single technology is a double sword. We all also know that, But from that perspective, what I love about AI, what I love about Gen AI is that it's opening up imaginations that might be limiting for us. So, with AI, we can imagine, well, how might a plant think, quote unquote, how might mycelium, what would mycelium intelligence be? How can we prioritize for their needs instead of thinking always from our human perspective? So in a way, it's opening doors and opening conversations that we have never had before. And I think that's a great starting point.
I think for myself, when we talk about Futurity and all the innovations that you've made, it's almost like this mini NASA. You make things that are very out there, but eventually all those things that are out there would slowly come back to our reality and life that we would use. I can imagine Herbie understanding plants. If this could be miniaturized and placed next to my wife, I would definitely understand my wife a bit more after 20 years. I still need to understand her. So I think when we talk about reality, we always need a starting point. And to me, for designers, starting is the most important step. If you don't start, you don't know where things would develop, right? So when we put into that perspective, we have to start somewhere. And each and every one here on the stage has that launch step, right? And I think yours is quite clear. You're interested in everything, right? And we can only have so much time to do everything. Luca has his ideas about the collective. And I think that you've also presented something that is now more into architecture and relate to this experiential side of space, which, different scale, but it's proven now that we see that, and we can imagine even more as a springboard for the future of architecture, right? So I think everybody has this a starting point that is very, very interesting. So I don't know if you think that, I'm pretty sure the audience would have this question in mind, or how with all this intelligence and AI, how would that affect their role, their career as a designer or an architect? Would this help, or would this sort of compete, augment, or what? I'm curious to hear from all of you guys.
Maybe one thing, if I may add to what Cecilia was saying before, I think our role shifted a bit. We have in front of us, like especially LLMs, are something that we I'd not define them as idea generator. There's a nice term which is idiot savant, like intelligent idiot or idiot or whatever. So I think we have in front of us the somebody that we can ask a bunch of questions to and answer with infinite knowledge, almost infinite knowledge. And so I think like the role of architects nowadays, or the role of thinkers nowadays, is becoming more and more being able to ask the right questions, besides actually just finding the right answers. And an interesting thing, like if you need to create innovation, if you need to innovate, what you would need is also getting a feedback loop, right? So, and probably, I mean, it's likely that what you're trying to do, somebody else in the world did it at the same time. And before, the best tool that we could use is Google, and or similar search engines. Now we have way more answers at our fingertip. And therefore, we shorten that loop of somehow feedback loop. So I think two things. One is being able to ask the right questions, and the second one is try to test it through AI is also a good way to somehow speed up innovation.
Very interesting. I think maybe one thing that also bridge between also Luca and Cecilia is also Cecilia also focusing on turning that into actions, right? And prototyping, as you said, the beginning of your lecture, prototyping is power. So I think also thinking about how to use that, like Luca said, maybe like the process, learning from the process of AI, but also prototyping and testing it out, but then feedback looping back into AI, or maybe creating a more collective feedback loop intelligence where not one or the other is probably dominant, is also quite interesting in a way.
Right, but when you talk about what Cecilia and Luca had done with their experimentations, for Miho, experimentation is also a risk factor, right? You can only go so much with survival. So this has to be real. This has to be robust and solve real problems, right? So how do you experiment from your point of view, taking some cues of intelligence in AI?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So we really still use it as a tool. So we really,
use it when we need to. And maybe that's also part of being at MIT and just having it everywhere around you and wanting to make sure that it's applied in a way where we can still understand what the use of it is in a very clear manner, and there is no risk-taking in that, right? So I think that there's just too much at stake to be able to experiment with it in ways that respond to disasters. But I do think that, so what we were showing in just having more information at your fingertips and being able, during a workshop, to be able to do this curation and analysis, that's where it works great for us at the moment. So I think we're operating in a way that's maybe very conservative, but necessarily so. And then I just wanted to address your first question very briefly, because I do think there is an equity part of this. So even at MIT, there's a big discussion about what credits, like what can all the students use versus the students who can afford it, right? So that there is that question somewhere in what you were asking as well.
Can I chime in about, I love your talk. I love your talk in so many ways because not often do we think of design. We often think of design as this fancy, career that we design pretty things, and we don't really think about design as a response to disasters, right? And it brought me back into one of the conversations that we had. We did a magazine about the space. And someone in the audience asked us, well, why are you going to space? Why are you thinking about space? Do we have to solve problems on Earth? And I remember distinctly thinking about when we were talking about space, when we were talking about how do we have food production in space, how do we deal with certain issues, if we were able to solve that, we actually could solve disaster response because they're essentially the same thing. And so I find this conversation really interesting because the dual use, this discourse this interesting because it's exactly the same mindset, right? And how do you apply this use case, this context, in this alternative use cases?
Thank you very much. I think also one thing to think about in terms of using that as a way to broaden imaginations is also interesting, right? I think one thing that also comes up maybe in different levels throughout the projects that you guys have shown today, but I think in a way it also has been used to broaden the horizon of what we can think about, both architecture or space or products or whatever it is. So how do you think, AI or in complementary, I think, to existing conventional ways of how we design today, how could that become complementary, sort of tools in maybe everyday, more grounded architecture studios or even any other design studio that might not have the capacity, for example, to maybe go there yet. Is there any thoughts on that?
Well, I think everybody inside of the room, if they're working with architecture, they know that, again, as an idiot savant, so clever idiots that can regurgitate a lot of information that's been fed with before. AI can solve basic problems or problems that have been already solved by someone else. And by that, I'm talking about in the architecture field or has to do with detailing, very basic detailing or very basic tackling of problems that has been already common knowledge. That is something you can work with. That is for sure shortening the design process, making it more efficient, streamlining certain phases of design. We all use it also at the very first stages of design to give shape to some initial ideas, I think. We brought a couple of projects in last year Biennale about how to design for example, social housing. through AI. You give some parameters, you shorten the design process, you make it more cheap, you make it more efficient, you already contact the, possibly also contact the builders. They're building like building components to make sure that those building components can be integrated inside of the design and at a cheaper cost. So it's making some tasks and some process of design, the more repetitive one, more accessible, let's say. But at the same time, it's challenging us to think about different ways of implementing things. And again, as a clever idiot, I don't think that can be done yet through AI. Breaking the scheme, breaking the rules, going the extra mile, going the extra step, making a not so evident connection, that is something we'll still have to do ourselves, at the moment at least.
Can I?
Yeah. You have to. You have to.
So have you seen the movie I, Robot?
Yes.
And do you remember this moment where, was it Will Smith? And Will Smith was saying something about, I don't exactly remember the movie, but he said something about like, well, can you write a masterpiece of this orchestra music, X, Y, and Z? I can't remember what he said. And do you remember what the robot said?
That he didn't feel emotions. Was that one?
No, the robot said, "Can you?"
Yeah.
And I remember that. I remember that because I can't. I can't. But eventually they will be able to. So I'm thinking if we break it apart, the AI systems right now, right? You have inputs. What are the inputs? You have text, you have, and then you have these outputs, and the outputs could be text also, but outputs could be movie, outputs could be images, could be sound, could be music. But this is today, right? If we look at the future, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, the input could be brain waves and other things that I probably can't even imagine. And the output could be like smell, could be molecules, could be law, could be many other things that we haven't been able to even imagine, right? So for me, what is fundamental, and I'm going to bring back the bot that says, "Can you?" is that there's one thing that is, I think we're focusing a little too much about like us versus AI. It's really about, which I really love about the topic, is the hybrid AI. AI is meaningless without us. And I think every day more we are augmented by what AI can offer us.
No, fully agree with you. No, fully agree.
Okay. We have 19 minutes. Shall we?
Let's open to the public.
We can also ask Herbie what it thinks about this hybrid intelligence.
They're biased. They're biased.
I'm curious to hear from the audience if anyone would like to ask questions.
Well, I do have a question. I have to move to the middle because my work is about finding the balance. Anyway, thank you for whoever is organizing today. This is a perfect speakers for me. 3 of you touches 3/4 of the work I do. If there's one agriculturalist, it would be perfect for my current situation.
Rice.
Because, yeah, exactly. But because, Cecilia, you and I have known each other for a while. Through Fab Cafe, I work with technologies. Through Design for Disasters, I work, and .org, I actually, kind of similar to yours, I work with disaster project in Bangkok, in Thailand, and actually Southeast Asia. And then, of course, through my company called Nature, I work with, trying to experimental in terms of space and architecture. So today, the questions, I'm sorry, I have to write it down because it's have to be precise. Currently, I'm working on finding a new balance in nature with human as part of the equations. And this is going to be a 2-part question. If sati means awareness of interdependence, how do we design our systems so that human activities become a net positive force within natural systems? And what is the first leverage point to act on? The second question is, in the context of state, wisdom, and prompt, awareness ground in the present. How do we design systems that are not just smart or resilient, but wise, right? This is kind of like the AI part already. And what is one concrete decision you would change tomorrow on how cities, territories are currently being designed?
Is that 3 questions?
Well, it's 2 questions, but each of them has 2 sub-questions.
When somebody stands up, has something written on the phone, and it starts with, I've been working with 3/4 of what you said, okay. It's already a bad start. Well, it's very complex. But I'll leave it to Cecilia. I just no, I think, I mean, the general idea of how to integrate natural and artificial, I think there's not like a silver bullet for this. It's really like case-by-case scenario. As I mentioned before, I think a lot of things is about trying to understand how nature evolved over the years and try to understand how this evolution somehow is something that we want to incorporate into the built environment, vice versa. We're seeing around the world how cities are trying to re-green themselves as a wider policy, and I think that's also a part of our feeling. E. Wilson was calling it biophilia, so the idea of human being in relationship with something else than just other humans, and the idea of natural affinity towards nature and other living beings. And ultimately, this is also connected with, as you saw in Singapore, also for Capital Spring, this idea of somehow going a bit further, like One Health. So the idea is that we can't be healthy in a jungle of concrete, in a concrete jungle, but we need nature to be healthy. And so, therefore, what the question might be how men and how people can actually give back to nature somehow what nature is giving us. So I think that's a broader question. There are a lot of different experiments that we brought to Biennale about how people and nature can coexist. From tiny ones like Genie Gang that designed houses for non-human inhabitants of Venice, for example. So bees, birds, and a series of other species that are co-living in a city, but that we don't design necessarily for. We have a nice experiment at the MIT, and a nice project that MIT has done together with a developer, and it's about counting bees, counting pollinators. That are actually the ones that make nature alive in a city, are like tiny little, insects or other species that are actually making nature alive, and we're not caring for them when we design a built environment. UK started a law in which basically are giving back to the developer some square meters or some incentives, let's say, if you're actually able to assess that your development is good for the environment. And so counting bees became a very important thing there. So we developed an AI system that is helping us, like making sure that the ecosystem is a live one and not a fake green screen. So I think there are a lot of technology can help us working better with the environment, and on the other hand, environment can help us living better in the city. There's one more project that I want to mention. I think it's really interesting. It's about how to design and build with nature and not against it. It's a project by TUM, so Munich University of Technology, and this great researcher, Professor Ludwig. They are building with trees in a way that they're actually guiding the growth of trees to incorporate man-made structure. So it becomes a hybrid ecosystem in terms of structure. Somehow when tree grows, also the man-made structure can actually thrive and survive. It's quite interesting because it's a hybrid ecosystem. It's not like both systems are benefiting one from each other. But a lot of different ideas. I don't think there's one way to integrate the two. I think there are a lot of interesting examples. And I just answered just one of your questions, partially. So now I'll leave it to the others. Cecilia is still thinking. I could go on forever, just with pointless.
I have an answer. So I'm working on my PhD, and my PhD is on algorithmic futuring, right? Which is the application of AI on forecasting on futuring. And my thesis advisor said to me, how do you define intelligence? I was like, what do you mean? Intelligence is intelligence, right? And I was like, no, define intelligence. And I was like, shit, I don't know. How do you define intelligence? And I spent months and months and months looking at this very definition of how do I define intelligence. And I realized that for the longest time, as humans, have assumed that intelligence was very unique human ability. And we are every day more learning, and recently I read this book called The Sound of Life. And we're every day learning more and more in this book that every species have their own form and their own way of intelligence that's not the same as ours. And to address your question, Shuta, the first question about working with nature is that we need to start being more and more humble and understand these different forms of intelligence and how we might learn from it. So just to give you a really example, when we started working on this project, you remember Herbie, and we gave it a voice, and Herbie had a human voice. The first thing we said was like, why are we anthropomorphizing? Can't say that word, but you know what I mean. Anthropomorphizing human voice. And then from there, we realized like, no, I need to learn how to speak Herbie, not force Herbie to speak human. But how do we go about doing that, right? And so the very first thing I think human needs to learn is to decentralizing human ways of working and our definition of what intelligence is. That's number one. What was the second question? I have an answer for that too.
The second question is about...
smart city. As a city, how do you work city? Oh, I have an answer for that too. So,
I know you do.
so I'm from Barcelona, and Barcelona has this conference called Smart City Conference every November for the last, I don't know how many years, which I have been attending every single year, like, like a ritual. And one year, I have a lot of anecdotes. One year, someone challenged and said, why are we making cities smart? When shouldn't we be focusing on making our children smarter or our people smarter? Why are we making inanimate things smart, And then I go back and then I start looking at, okay, intelligence, definition, smart, what does that even mean? And one of the conclusions that I learned was that how do we become smart? How do humans become smart? And we become smart through learning. And how do we learn? We have a feedback loop. We do something, it's wrong, we don't do it anymore, we learn something else, it works great, we go that way. How do cities learn? They don't actually learn, right? We just build on top of it, on top of it, on top of it, on top of it. But in this age of, I'm talking way too much, but I'm stopping now. But in the age of smart city, when we have these sensors that could give us feedback, how can we leverage those sensors? And this is where smart citizen and citizen science, those kind of projects can help us build better cities that can learn from those different aspects of what works, what doesn't work. So that's what I wanted to say.
But I think that's a great capture. Just within that, if I could slide in, because it's very interesting. I know, just interpreting these words alone, like sati, awareness. You talk about awareness as well. I think everybody has awareness, a lot of awareness in the project, even though you don't spell out the words. But I think maybe I can jump back to also Miho, building on the conversation we had before. Do you think can a city be intelligent without being equitable?
Suddenly there's silence.
Oh, there's silence. Is it too heavy? Like everybody can change my questions, or you can change my questions. But yeah, can a city be intelligent without being equitable?
Well, so I see the city as the people in the city, not just the infrastructure in the city. Sorry, one more time. You always have such difficult questions for us.
Sorry.
Mental note, no more Pim as moderator. The questions are too difficult.
I'm so sorry. Maybe I'm being too meta. Or, I guess I can maybe simplify it a little bit. So, do you think a city can become, with all of these infrastructure, we can do so much with technologies and, collective intelligence and things like that. But I think also building up on top of that, how do we develop in parallel the way that city could be very smart or intelligent, and then also the people who live within it? Like, how do we make the two systems come together so that, for the better well-being of the city itself, right? But also the well-being of the people living in it. So, in a way, do you think they could come together, and maybe how? Yeah.
Still a very difficult
So very.
question.
Yeah. But if we talk about
the question is good. It's just hard to...
a smart city as a integrated hybrid ecosystem with all different parts of intelligences from nature, from living creatures, humans, and AI. I think, and that also answers the question that we think of ourselves as VIPs. Mm-hmm. But VIPs doesn't mean very important people. It's we're very vulnerable and insignificant people in this world. So there's much greater, larger things that impact how things go in this world. So if we look at from that perspective, there's a lot of things, if we're talking about an ecosystem, that we can learn and from all intelligences and make that as a prototype of a living ecosystem, right? That incorporates everything. And this goes against basic management 101, right? If you please all, you would fail. But with AI, you can please everyone, and this is a necessity that you have to please all intelligence to survive. So you can't leave any intelligence behind. Nature has to be there, living creatures have to be there, humans have to survive. How do we integrate all of that? I think that's your question, right? Or is that even more comprehensive?
It gets harder and harder.
I apologize. And now we have 5 minutes left.
It gets harder and harder, but I think I need to play the devil's advocate here, because I think the more that we rely on all of this technology, so I'm still the person who, for a long time, did not want to use Google Maps, because I feel like then I forget how to navigate the city, right? So I'm one of those stupid people who is like stubborn in a way where I don't want to stop using this. And I think that same thing with like sensors across the city. Like if we know exactly what we need to put in and how to use the data to then make the city more equitable, great. But in so many cases, consumerism, increasing the economy of the area, like there's so many other things that then make us throw sensors all across the city to either experiment or to then sell products that don't actually help us as humans evolve. Right. And I think the same thing is the question with nature, is that we are so controlling of nature without understanding it fully. And so I think that there is the moment of reflection, which is the prompt of this, to make sure that we are addressing the issues that we have now as well, and making sure that there is this kind of equity in that knowledge sharing and resources that actually help us as humans become more intelligent than having the city become smarter.
Yeah, I actually think that AI is forcing us to think what is human.
It is.
What makes human.
And thank you for bringing this back to sati and wisdom, because I think that is the core of the whole forum that we're talking about. Is it's not doing things right, but making the right choice and doing the right thing. That matters. And we know that AI can do great things, but at the end of the day, it's all about this collective, right?
Do you have anything to add, Luca? Or
I'm just asking if there are any other questions in the room, which
A
people who
question
doesn't have a
at the back.
phone and say, otherwise it's going to be too hard.
Hello.
Well, a lot
few
of
questions there.
My name is Ot. I'm a young designer in Bangkok. My question is, I think it's opening and simple. Like, I think Cecilia have mentioned a lot about what if, like those kind of questions that can invent new technologies, innovation, right? Even for the urban, for the architecture. So I think my question is like, ask the question, what if is like human invent new things in this day, but in the future, what if like this question can be affected by intelligence, like artificial intelligence? Do we still need to ask this question, what if? Or AI will replace this question? And instead of question this kind of thing, what if, we just do nothing in the future? Or it's like evolve into something new kind of question, like what if something else? Yeah. What do you think in the future? What the question of the what if? Yeah.
Well, maybe it was better the one with the phone. No, it's a very, very good question. I mean, what if it's basically testing a scenario, right? What if it's about things that could happen or could have happened? So I think testing, like it's a big part of what we were saying before of the feedback loop, right? To innovate, you need to ask yourself a lot of what if. For sure, AI now, even nowadays, it's very helpful to answer to these what if. It can simulate, it can test for you. And this is true for the work that we do, like architecture, also somehow urban design. I wonder, Miho, I'm sorry to ask a question to you, but what is your what if? Can you test a disaster? How do you prepare for a disaster with a what if question? Because you can't really like do a feedback loop. What you design has to work, because otherwise it's human beings that are like losing their lives or not recovering properly. So I think, to answer your question more directly, I think what if it's something that we can ask to AI even nowadays and helps us designing better and doing the next step. Ultimately, it's testing, it's iterating. But I wonder, how do you iterate before designing something?
Yeah, so I think that's where we are working on the modeling part of it and then ground truthing to make sure that the models are calibrated so that we do go through these what if scenarios. I think what I would like to throw back to you is, would you like a future where you don't have to ask what if? Because that's embedded in your question, right? I don't want that future. Like, I still want to be the matchmaker of what if scenarios and think about what they are. But there are plenty of people who may not want that. But I think this has been such an interesting forum to think about from like all of your work and this different perspectives and the really amazing questions that we've been having. And I think that kind of reflection that we've been prompted to do is just going to continue throughout. But I would love to hear your answer to your own question. Do you want that future?
I think this day I use the AI a lot to my design works, and it's been questioning to myself, like I feel a little bit dumber every day. So sometimes I need to leave the gap that, okay, this thing, I need to think myself. I need to think for this thing first, and then use the artificial intelligence to like give another opinions. But of course, I think in the future, I think it's none of humanity that wants to be dumb, foolish. So I think the question of what if is what the thing make us smarter. But it just the question is like how AI, this kind of thing, will affecting us in the future. That's like something. What if we think like this? What's gonna happen? Yeah.
Can I just add that, having tried to be a doctor unsuccessfully, one of the things that I learned was that asking questions like what if is actually very biological. So in our hippocampus, this is the same part of the brain where you store your memory. and it's the same part of the brain where you imagined. So when you ask a question like, let's say yesterday I went to the forest and I found berries. But my brain would say, oh, tomorrow, what if I go over to the desert? Am I going to find berries? And then in my brain, this is a survival mechanism. We'll see, have I been to the sand before? Yes. Have I ever found berries? No. So I recombine and I will create scenarios and see if I'm going to be able to make good decisions based on things that I have learned. So I don't think we'll ever, because it's biologically ingrained in our survival mechanism, I don't think we will ever stop asking what ifs. I think, but to your answer, we need to start, this is where I was talking about critical thinking, is that when do we use AI to ask those questions? When do we ask ourselves those questions? And we need to be more critical in deciding when to use what.
Do we have a bit more time, or we're like running out? But I think there's some more questions in the crowd.
Hello.
Please.
สวัสดีครับ Hello. Sorry. So this morning, before Ajahn Ben was running to his lecture in the morning session, we had the final review for the competition. I think we just announced, right? So that session that you walked around and looked at, could you help reflect on that experimental design competition, which is the same, I think, kind of topic here, the hybrid wisdom, right? What did you see, or what did you observe from the result of that competitions, and especially from students, which is the young generations? What did they talked about in terms of the wisdom, the hybrid wisdom, and what do they see to the future? So in these kind of topics. So please.
My God, how can we tell that we were totally biased about all of that? No. Sorry.
Well, why am I going first? You go. Okay. I also don't know what to say, but it's just like I'm trying to make up something. So, as we said before, I think every single submission had a lot of thoughts behind it. So I think it was quite interesting to see how some issues or some problems were actually tackled in very different directions. And I think that's the beauty of this kind of competition and contest. Ultimately, you see a lot of different people are coming together to answer the same questions. It is a collective intelligence exercise, ultimately. Means that you're, based on your background, based on your research on ChatGPT or using AI, you're tackling that from many different directions. And even if the topic was somehow a shared one, list at the very beginning, you get a lot of different answers and a lot of different directions. Then there is another thing that comes into play, is the way you represent that answer and the way you represent that direction, which is another variable that comes into play when it gets for the judges to judge the submissions. Ultimately, it has to be clear, it has to be at least partially a shared common ground, because you need to understand what's the solution is proposing. So there's a lot of complexity in both creating a submission for a competition like that and reading it on the other side of that. So I think we definitely got some very interesting inputs. I like the board of the person that made the question before. You got an honorable mention, right? Did you get an honorable mention? Third prize, yes. So that was a very, very interesting one. But all of them, I think, had a very interesting topics they were tackling, even the one that didn't win, or even the one that were not shortlisted. And I think the richness of doing a competition like that, ultimately, it's more in all of the submission coming together than in the actual prizes that jury is giving to maybe the best represented one or the best idea, even if not very well represented. So this is a question to the organizers, actually. Would I think it has value to publish all of the submission actually, because people can actually go through, as I mentioned before to my colleagues here, when we don't win a competition, an architectural one, we always try to print the boards of the people who won the competition, the second prize, the third prize, to try to learn from them, not just how to represent things or how to design a building, but it's really what were the questions that they asked themselves. So I think that's the value of a competition like this. It's more like in the question that people are asking and the question the jury are making and raising. It didn't answer the question, but fine anyway.
You answered it perfectly. I'm sure he's talking about criteria. And I think that sort of summarizes what we think about in the competition as well. So I think a lot of that has to do with the first question that you asked, which topic you're selecting. So the problem has to be significant, complex, challenging, and also it has meaningful and impactful ways to a lot of things. We don't choose an easy topic to challenge ourselves as designers and as humans. So that's the beginning point, right? And then the other humanistic side is that besides all the problem solving that AI can do for us, where's the humanistic side in all of that? Where's the culture? Where's the things that make us humans in all of those questions and designs? And we looked into all of that, and we were debating. It was a very hard choice, and I'm trying to be very politically correct here, that if we could, we would give awards to all of those 20 entries, right? But it all boils down to the impact and how we see this integrated as intelligence and as humans. And I think that should sort of summarize what we did. And at the end of the day, we're all good friends, right? Although we argued about a few things, but we have the same kind of alignment about the goal of all of those proposals that were submitted, right?
Do you have anything else to add, Miho? I saw you were raising a mic a little bit. Do you have anything else to add on that?
You summarized it really well. I was just going to add something similar to that it was such a difficult prompt. And I think that I appreciated how the real challenge and problem solving and pragmatism was in there with the then anticipation of what AI could do in many ways. And so I think that they all addressed, I guess I expected to see much more like far out, like what the, but they were all really grounded in something that they were trying to solve and then using AI and for, I guess pragmatic makes it sound negative, but it's not at all. It was a great set of projects that we got to discuss over.
Can I just add? I love the process because reading every one of the submittal, I get to live through their eyes. And I get to see maybe what are their worries, what are their concerns. Are they worried about food? Are they worried about climate change? Are they worried about traffic in the city? And what was the most beautiful thing for me was that they were all very hopeful. They all found solutions, and they were all leveraging AI technology, drones, whatever it is, and they feel that they have the ability to be able to solve that problem. And for me, that was amazing. For me, that was like, wow, I get to live that. How privileged of me to see through their eyes, to be able to see the solution. So thank you.
Yeah, I only have one caveat out of all that is I find myself pinching and zooming into the printed boards because I can't see, I can't read.
Too small, printing too small. Okay, maybe we have one more questions over there from the crowd.
I have a simple question. I am a designer before, and now I'm making and design the children book. So as a simple and very human question, if you ask yourself, my question is for all of you in the stage. If you say something to your younger self, and you, when you was young, we have
Don't
faced,
study architecture.
yes. Now we are facing as a chaos, and everything new, everything is the same era that we're facing together with AI or new thing, new technology. And what do you say to your younger self? Or if you have your kids, what do you say that, what do you give and say to them? And what is the core if you facing more challenging in the future? What you say to you that you will do what you're doing now?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Study less, work less, so that you keep your hairs.
I love your answer.
No, I think, generally, what the worst thing that somebody that does architecture can do now is to focus too much on architecture itself. I think what we also experienced in the Biennale, architecture is made together, and it's made together with IT experts, with biologists, with engineers sometimes, with a series of other people that are actually working together in the built environment to find solutions. So my suggestion to a person who is studying architecture at the moment is really try to broaden their horizons, try to bring together different interests, and really try to study more also in other fields. Then you can't study everything, but at least like developing some interest for other things will broaden your horizon, will open your mind, and then when it gets to architecture, when it gets to doing the practice, to actually work on the built environment, you know that solutions are not necessarily just coming from space, light, or design, but are also coming from a lot of different prompts or ideas that can come together.
I think it's for all three of you.
All three of us? Okay. So I am a very optimistic person, and I know that I've been so very questioning things during this panel. But I think, so as a mother, I think feeling the deep emotions is something that I've seen children these days outsource to AI. Right? That they use it to respond to chats. They use it to break up with partners. So I think as much as possible as humans, the kind of creativity and the emotions is something that we want to hold on to. And whether it's a high or a low, that kind of processing is ultimately necessary for us to be resilient. And so it sounds pessimistic, but it's meant to be giving strength and empowering our children to be able to withstand and cope with any kind of situation and not outsourcing too many things to AI.
Yes, totally agree. You can only protect your child so much. And this goes into all playgrounds that are designed out there. They are designed not to be playful, but they're designed so that your kids can get injured, but not injured to the point that they have to go to the hospital, right? So that says a lot about development for kids. They need to learn the hard way. And if they don't go through that process of learning and falling, then you're not being human.
Agree.
I would tell my younger self, and I would tell my girls, to always follow their curiosities, even if other people tell them that it's wrong, or even if it is illegal. I will explain myself. Don't go out there and do illegal things, but I will explain myself. at some point in history, I would even, if I might be remembering my dates wrong, but until 1985, in Spain, where I live, a woman cannot have their own bank account. It was illegal for a woman to have their own bank account. They have to have their husband co-sign their bank account for them. If at that point, if someone didn't say no, what if women can have women can have bank accounts? What if women can have economic rights? What if we can break that, law or regulation and imagine that future? What if we have that power of curiosities? And I am not encouraging you all to go do illegal things, but I am encouraging you all to question the status quo and keep your curiosity as your way to explore this new world.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those are beautiful answers. And thank you for the questions. I love the questions also. I think the floor has one last question. I think this is great because we have a lot of questions, so please.
Thank you very much. I'm also an educator, and many of us are educators here. And it's nice to hear your approaches, and also nice to hear questions from also young generations. As today, there are many things changes, like we need to handle several, many parameters like resilience or disruption or AI. And I agree with Professor. Sometimes if I use too many tools, for example, Google Map, I lose my sense of direction, for example. And it's nice to hear that we should also listen to some others, in order to hear what you say. My question is that, what is your opinion if, when we know that there are several changes, and then what could be form of education to prepare our younger generation to handle with the balance or with some changes? Yeah. I would like to hear your opinion. Thank you very much.
Professor? There's only one professor.
I hate teaching, just so you know that, so take a grain of salt. But with my girls, I want them to be able and seeing what the future of work might look like, the future of education. I'll often tell them to have the ability to learn and unlearn. And I don't think we're taught to unlearn anything. We're only taught to learn. And so this ability to learn and unlearn very quickly, because it will allow us to adapt this very fast-changing world that we're facing. We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's another sentence by Buckminster Fuller that I'm using here just to answer a tiny bit of your question, which is basically once you have a changement in the world or in a situation, you can't resist to it. You need to embrace it and try to use it at your own in your own way to make something. And so I think here, I mean, the solution is not like not making kids using AI for the first 10 years of their life or 20 years of their life or whatever. I think it's more like probably it's a shifting way of teaching to people. When I was a kid, I was not my high school. I didn't do my high school in the US. I did it in Italy, which is an old-fashioned way of learning and teaching things. So I've been taught to learn what was the date of the French Revolution, all this kind of thing. I mean, somehow it helps your brain to memorize things, which is the thing that I don't know how to do, by the way. I'm very bad with memory. But at the same time, I think the most interesting part nowadays is not really having a notion of something that can be found online or even read in a book. Takes a bit more time, but it's there. you probably need to learn how to think, which is a slightly different angle. And all the things that you are teaching to a person should be somehow directed to make that person learn how to think, how to ask the right questions, how to think in the right way or in an unconventional way. But even that, I mean, you need to be consistent in doing so. So I think there's not like one way of teaching. Also, we don't have a solution here, as you can understand. But I think, I mean, the direction shouldn't be the one of limiting the access to technology, but actually completing technology with a different way of thinking, asking themselves questions, and go beyond what technology says.
Okay.
Completely agree with that. And I think the only small thing I'd like to add is then this, right? To have the debate, have those conversations, because it's so easy to think that learning is something that you absorb and you can do it on your own, or you can do it right? But actually then counter-arguing and having the debate and having the discussion is so critical. And so I think that even in these very large classes, finding ways that the conversation continues outside of the class is really important. And then that is then generative of the new ideas that come out of those discussions.
It's actually a very nice thing, because more and more AI is a mirror of yourself. And that means that you don't have a counterpart that disagree with what you're saying. So I agree, we should disagree.
Okay, so I think that's the last question.
Shall we wrap up?
Well, I'd like to thank our speakers for today, Cecilia, Luca, and Miho, and also Ajahn Pim, and most definitely the audience who stayed towards the very beginning and towards the end. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the organizers and sponsors of the event. I think it's very important in this day and age with city wisdom and prompt and Trump that we pause, take a step back, scan the horizon and see what intelligences are out there, that we hope that we make the right choice for our futures. So with that, thank you all for being here.